On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, I'm fresh and back from Toronto Raptors locker cleanout day, where the vibe was very much not that of a 30-win basketball team.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, April the 14th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can also find the show on Instagram, and you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Free to do, as always. Link in the description of the podcast. Can be part of our listener family. You can also subscribe for free to the daily Locked On Raptors newsletter. QR code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Link in the description of the podcast if you're listening on audio. And it's much appreciated when you support it. You can also win some stuff, which we'll tell you about a little bit later on in the show, just by subscribing between now and April the 30th. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And we're off and running here, talking sort of maybe a little bit at the end about a couple of Raptors basketball games to close out the season, a pair of losses in Dallas and San Antonio, but mostly we're here to talk all about Raptors Locker Cleanout Day Players Edition. They're spreading this one out over the course of 3 days. The players spoke today. Darko Rajakovic will speak on Tuesday, and Masai Ujiri is set to address the assembled masses at OVO Athletic Center on Wednesday. I'm hoping to be at all three. It'll depend on some timing and stuff, whether I make it to Darko on Tuesday. But either way, we're going to run through what we heard from Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Jakob Poeltl, RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, Jamal Shed. They all spoke before I had to hightail out of there to record this podcast for you fine folks. I think Emmanuel Quickly and Grady Dick also spoke after I had to leave. Either way, we're going to run through some big takeaways. We're going to get into just the hope that was emanating from all of the dudes up on that dais today and just how warranted it is with what the team did this year. You win 30 games. Is it all that normal to feel this optimistic about a season to come? We'll get into that. We've got the good, the bad, and the from the games that took place over the weekend as well. But yeah, let's get into my bigger takeaways from Locker Cleanout Day. And I think for me, this team does just seem way more connected and unified than your classic 30-win basketball team. And it's a really stark comparison to the last couple of years, which in fairness, I wasn't at Locker Cleanout Day. Either the two previous seasons where, of course, they missed the playoffs and won 25 games last year, and then they lost in the play-in in very embarrassing fashion back in 2022-23. I watched all those press conferences. I felt the vibe in the fan base just the same. It's a very different feel, at least I thought it was today at OVO. Listening to these guys talk about the year to come, the year that just happened, what they laid down. And I think there were three sort of unifying things, maybe four unifying things that everyone kind of had some sort of comment on. And those comments very much mirrored one another throughout the day. The first thing is I just think everyone's very excited for what the team is capable of next year. I think there's a lot of belief in the dudes they have in-house. I think there's excitement about what they're going to bring into the team with the high draft pick they have incoming as well. And yeah, I just think that is sort of number one. There seems to be a genuine sort of like palpable sense of we're just getting started here and there's better days ahead for us. This 30-52, it was a progressive season. A lot of good stuff happened to lay down track. And now it's about actually kind of going on the journey and finding success. But it does seem like everyone's pretty content with what happened this year when it comes to just kind of putting in the foundation, the beginning of the rebuild that this whole season was ostensibly about. The second thing, the rookies. Everyone seemed to be extremely impressed by the rookies and what they did this season. Scottie Barnes talked about it. I asked Scottie sort of as the leader of the team, did he feel energized having this kind of wave of young guys come in? And yeah, his response was essentially, our rookies were incredible. Trust in Bobby and Masai. They were awesome. And they're a big reason why the team was able to grow and be, kind of fuel that optimism for next season, because these guys came in and did stuff that you don't usually see from rookies. RJ Barrett very much said the same thing. Let me find the exact quote from here about the rookies. He had it in here somewhere. He essentially said they're great. You bring a guy like Jamal, and everyone loves Jamal. And I think the rookies, they brought this personality to the team that really kind of, and Jamal Shed was a big part of that, kind of helped bring everybody out of their shell a little bit as far as the rookies kind of getting ingratiated into the team. And then his other thing he had to say about the rookie was just like, the stuff that they did as rookies is not normal. Like the way that they came in and were ready to go, ready to just kind of jump in from day one. That's not stuff you usually expect to see from rookies. And I think across the board, Jakob Poeltl had good things to say about the rookies. On down the line, everyone seemed pretty thrilled with the young guys. Even Brandon Ingram talked about it, just sort of the defensive juice that the rookies play with, the young guys play with. That's something he wants to mirror himself going into next year. He's going to be thinking about it a lot. Beyond that, the other kind of big takeaways that everyone was on in lockstep on, Darko Rajakovic. Everybody loves Darko. Not surprising, but top to bottom, all kinds of anecdotes about times Darko called guys out within games, times Darko, sort of worked with guys on the side and, kind of had this balance of accountability with genuine teaching and like love and caring for his guys. The rookies talked about this. Jamal Shed said that there was a game early in the season that both he and Jakob Poeltl talked about where they played the Indiana Pacers, and Jamal Shed had like 10 turnovers in the game. Darko razzed him after, I think that's the most turnovers a rookie's ever had in a basketball game. And he then used that as a chance to sit down, watch film, talk him through it, use it as a learning moment. Jakob Poeltl as well. He said there was a moment late in the season where they were in a timeout and Darko chewed him out for quote unquote being weak on the court. He wasn't being aggressive. And he said that kind of turned him up. When he chews me out, he knows it's kind of lights a fire under me. I think that speaks a little bit to Darko having a bit of a handle on how each different guy's buttons gets pressed. I think that's such a skill to have, just, being a manager, someone who has to, deal with people, who has to manage egos. I think he's got a pretty good handle on how each guy ticks, how each guy's going to take feedback and apply it. And I thought that was a really informative thing that Jacoby said. RJ Barrett had really glowing praise as well. Just talked about the trust that gets built when you are coached by someone who really cares about you. He challenges you. You can have a conversation about him with anything. All that stuff just kind of goes into feeling like a genuine amount of trust. And he was also asked about what Darko's going to be like. RJ was. He was asked about what Darko's going to be able to bring to the table next season as the team tries to win basketball games. And he was pretty effusive in his praise about just the basketball they play as well and the stuff that he draws up. He made note of Darko's ATOs and how basically every time they're running out of timeout play, they're getting a wide open shot or scoring every single time. The stuff where they play the ball, share the ball, play the right way, et cetera, all that stuff. I just think across the board, there seems to just be a real appreciation for what Darko Rajakovic has done in year two to kind of build the culture. A lot of talk about culture, a lot of talk about, sort of just the way in which Darko deals with guys and how personable he is and how much he cares both about the basketball development and the non-basketball stuff. It's pretty cool to have a coach that everyone is that on board with. And again, look, it's locker cleanout day. You're always going to hear effusive praise. You're never going to hear anything terribly explosive or inflammatory. It's all going to be kind of boilerplate, but I think the uniformity with which everyone kind of spoke about all these different things really was telling to me. The other thing that everyone gave very high praise to was Garrett Temple, just as a dude, as a vet. Obviously hurt himself in that last game of the season. We got some update on him. We'll get into the injury stuff a little bit later on in the show. Nothing too horrible there or anything like that. An MCL sprain, it seems, for Garrett Temple. But just across the board, everybody, Jamal Shed talked at length about the impact that Garrett Temple has had. Jakob Poeltl was asked himself about kind of being a veteran on the team, and he turned it into an answer about what a great veteran Garrett Temple is and how you just can't replicate the kind of veteran leadership he brings to the table, both as far as how to be a good pro and also how to survive as a professional athlete with all that's kind of bearing down on you, and how to be just a good person through all of it. I just think it does feel, if the goal at the start of the season for the Raptors was, or when they hired Darko Rajakovic, was to kind of return to the sort of setup they had in the 2010s, where they found success with great culture, roster-wide buy-in, sort of this connected familial vibe within the team, kind of overcoming a lack of maybe super duper high-end talent. I really think they've gotten back to that. It genuinely seems like this team loves one another. I believe one of the Scottie Barnes quotes from today is, "I genuinely love all of these guys," and something to the effect of, "It sucks that we kind of, that this is why the end of the season stinks, is because we don't get to be with each other every day." Like, I don't think it's made up. I don't think it's, just kind of stuff they're saying to quiet the masses. I think it's genuinely real that this team is fully in love with one another, likes to be around one another, wants to win together, wants to build together. And that is really awesome. That's awesome to hear. It's much better than the sort of strange vibes that came out of the last couple of years with Fred VanVleet's imminent departure and all that happened at the end of last season. I think even Scottie Barnes himself would say that he wasn't like as sort of juiced at the end of last year as he is going into next year. And I think he talked a lot about kind of his own growth as a leader and kind of building friendships with people and building relationships and kind of making himself into a guy who can kind of be a pillar of the culture. It's all looking up when it comes to where this team is going. We'll see how successful it will be. There are no guarantees. It's the NBA. You can have all the best laid plans and things can go awry because of injury or because you don't have enough to get over the top. You lose games and then things start to spiral from there. Winning obviously heals a lot of wounds. But I think they're setting themselves up in a really good spot going into next year, just organizationally, top down. It seems like everyone's on the same page. And that's something you want, right? Look at what happened with the Nuggets last week, where they got their whole thing blown up because the front office and the coaching staff were at war with one another for years, and it finally came to a head. Everyone was miserable. Look at the Pelicans. Look at the Phoenix Suns. Like, this culture stuff does matter. And the Raptors have proven over time that they can be a franchise that sort of makes that their identity. They did it through the entirety of the Kyle Lowry era to great effect. And it seems like they're right back on that course after a few years kind of in the wilderness when it comes to that. So that was the big overarching takeaway from what we heard. I want to get next into less what guys said and more how much do we buy it? Like, how warranted is it to be very hopeful for next year? Or is this just happy end of season speak that's not going to, parlay itself into actual on-court results? We'll get into that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at Prize Picks. Basketball and hockey playoffs are heating up, and there's no better way to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards than with Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even combine players across sports, basketball, hockey, baseball, and more for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Yeah, 2,000 times. That's pretty sweet. Of course, you've got the hockey playoffs coming up. Maybe you're someone who thinks the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to go make themselves a run. You think Austin Matthews is going to score a bunch of goals. Maybe you take the more on Austin Matthews goals in Game 1 against Ottawa this Saturday. Meanwhile, you can take the more on Nikola Jokic points in Denver's Game 1 against the LA Clippers, and you kind of build up those lineups. You get more and more entries, and you're going to win more and more money if you get all of those correct. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDNBA to get $50 instantly after your first play. After you first play a $5 lineup, that's code LOCKEDNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's show is also brought to you by friends at Wayfair, and spring is here. It means it's home project season. Whether you're refreshing your room or tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. I'm in the middle of this right now. We're retrofitting an old room into our new guest room so we can make our current guest room into our baby's room before he comes this summer. And we're currently looking for furniture. We're looking for a dresser / changing table thing, and it's been impossible to find one. Wayfair, we're whittling down our options, but it seems like Wayfair is going to be the way we go. Go check them out if you're looking for furniture for whatever project you've got going on. Once you finish the room, that feels like the hard part. Then you got to find the furniture. Wayfair can help with all of that. Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And back at it here on your Monday edition of Locked On Raptors, talking about the Toronto Raptors and locker cleanout day. The players speaking today, and again, across the board, a pretty optimistic bunch, I'd say. It just seems like a lot of good stuff happened this year. A lot of good groundwork was laid. Is it warranted though? Obviously you're going to hear mostly sort of happy boilerplate stuff on media day whenever everyone's assembled. You're never going to hear again, unless I think Patrick Patterson went out kind of inflammatorily back in the day. I think he like skipped exit interviews and that was the whole thing. But for the most part, like it's always pretty copacetic on the last day of the season. Everyone's just kind of saying what they got to say to go into the summer. But I do think, again, a lot of the stuff I buy at sort of face value of this team kind of feeling like there's something pretty exciting building here going into next season and beyond. But yeah, is that warranted kind of from the 10,000-foot view? Do you think that that's something that's actually going to come to fruition next season? And I'll tell you what, I kind of think it is. Like, and look, I'm not saying this team's going to go win a championship next season. I think everyone, when asked about expectations for next year, was very careful, as they always are, to not say the words championship or anything like that. That's Masai Ujiri's bag. I'm sure we'll hear him say that on Wednesday at some point. But players, they usually try to keep the expectations to a minimum, try to tamp it down, don't make any promises they can't fulfill, that type of thing. But I just think looking at it just common sense wise, looking at the roster, looking at how the team figures to be composed, and looking at the Eastern Conference, which if you look up and down, man, I don't know about you, I'm not scared of a lot of these teams. Yes, I think like the Knicks are going to be around. That team's going to have a window to be good for a while. I think obviously you've got your Cavs and Celtics up at the top. They're not going anywhere. The Pacers are pretty good. I think they'll be fine. The Bucks, who the hell knows what's going to happen with the Bucks? Maybe they're in the mix. Maybe they're a play-in team next year because of attrition and because they can only do so much when you have two really good players and a bunch of Kyle Kuzma after that. We'll see about the Pistons. I think there's a real chance the Pistons, A, get waxed by the Knicks in the first round, and B, maybe kind of do the Raptors thing from a couple years ago where they just kind of trust in what they have and don't do a ton to go over the top and make a move. It'd be great if they did. I'm rooting for that for Pistons fans, but they're, I think, a regression candidate next year. We'll see about the Hawks and the Magic. I think both teams can kind of go either way depending on how their summers go. I think Orlando badly needs a guard. Will they ever learn that? Who's to say? Atlanta needs some health on the wings for sure, and a big jump from Zachary Risachet probably next season, and Jalen Johnson being on the floor to be really good. But they're not out of the question going to be in that mix. But I think the Raptors firmly find themselves in that conversation of teams next season very easily, just based on the roster they have alone. I know there's a lot of disagreement over the decision to go get Brandon Ingram, but like you cannot argue with the talent upgrade. This team is going to go into next year with like 10 NBA rotation players if they get the sort of requisite year 1 to year 2 improvements that you hope to get from guys like Jamal Shed, Jakob Poeltl, Jonathan Mobo, Jamison Battle. All guys who I think it's fair to bet on. I think in particular, a guy like Walter, I'm a big believer that year 2 is going to be big for him. If you look at, he had the late start, the numbers were awful early on, and then as soon as he got settled in, things got more comfortable for him. He spoke a lot today about defense and kind of really feeling like a sense of pride in being a two-way player. I think that bore out as the season progressed. And if you just look at the advanced metrics, of all the guys on the team in terms of like on-off differential, if you're just going regulars who played, 1,000 or more minutes for this team this year, Jakob Poeltl ranks behind only Jakob Poeltl and Emmanuel Quickly when it comes to overall on-off differential. They were, I didn't check after the last 2 games to see what other guys kind of got in here, but Walter didn't play the last 2 games. They were 2.3 points better when he was on the floor versus when he was off. And that's great. That's really encouraging for a rookie. Usually rookies mean you're going to lose your minutes more than you typically would. Jakob Poeltl, I think. So there's a lot of reason to really believe in that dude as a two-way guy. Obviously, we know Grady Dick, very good player. Had a really excellent start to the season. Offensive guy who really upgrades the overall potency of the offense when he's on the floor as the numbers bore out all year. Then you got Jamal Shed, who I'm betting on that guy, man. Jamal Shed might have been my favorite guy to just hear talk today. Really well-spoken, really thoughtful guy. I even asked him a question because we've talked a lot about the sort of the growing pains that come with being a rookie kind of pesky on-ball defensive guard and the challenge of kind of getting an unfair whistle when that's the case. And I thought his response was just like wildly mature beyond really anyone's years, where he was just like, you know what, man, like these refs are people. They'll help you. They'll teach you how to ref if you learn their names and don't scream at them. Did I do this wrong? Did I do that wrong? And they'll teach you. And that's just kind of part of the deal. He talked a lot about just kind of the qualities of just being a good person and how far that can get you. And I'm a big believer in just like being a good person being a thing that it can get you pretty far. On top of, Jamal Shedd's pretty good at playing basketball too. The playmaking, the shooting came along a little bit. The defense, like there's a lot to like here with Jamal Shedd. And you factor him in. You factor in Jamison Battle, whose NBA elite skill is a really, really elite skill. As we saw in that game on Sunday against the Spurs, that dude can fill it up from deep. And, Jamal Shedd gave him real praise for defending his butt off, quote unquote, down the stretch too. I think there's something there with Battle as a guy who can offer more than just one dimension of shooting. And you start to look at it and, okay, if Jonathan Mobo's, able to be a nice connective piece and maybe find some stuff out on offense that he kind of struggled with this year. He had some pretty encouraging on-off metrics as well. His defense really pops off the screen. You're just looking at a team that's like, okay, like you're going to have just waves of good players to constantly have on the floor. That's not even considering the top 10 pick they're going to bring in. And that's not to say the top 10 pick is going to be a helpful player right away. Most rookies are not, but it's just going to be a lot of guys with like either high-end skill and pedigree or, kind of like the sort of baseline that they've already kind of established and the work ethic and all that stuff, or both. And I just think like, yeah, this is the team that's going to have the recipe to be a regular season bear. I think they're going to have, nights where they can, withstand injury because, okay, well, we have no Brandon Ingram tonight. That's okay. Well, we'll just have more Scottie Barnes, maybe Jakob Poeltl starts and, or Grady Dick starts. And we kind of have some continuity with the way we play because the way we play doesn't change based on who is playing in the lineup. I think they need some insurance behind Jakob Poeltl. He's probably the one guy that can't afford a serious injury to. Emmanuel quickly as well, depending on who they draft, I guess. But overall, like, it just feels like they're building towards something that can produce regular season results. We'll see about the playoffs. This is not a team that's going to get to the playoffs based on super duper high end talent. I think they obviously have more talent than they had a few months ago with Brandon Ingram coming in. I think Scottie Barnes is very talented, maybe more on the defensive end than on offense right now. But all told, I just think when you combine the across the board 1 through 10 or 11 talent they're going to have with the sort of connectedness that they very clearly have as a group, with what the coaching staff brings to the table, with the Eastern Conference not being very good, I think it's 100% warranted. And I think what you heard today at Media Day is something you can go into the summer and actually use it to fuel your optimism with. I think that is totally fair. It's exciting times, man. Like, I know the season was lame and the last 6 weeks were just like barely basketball and the Raptors got laughed at because of their tanking strategy and it not being good enough or whatever. I don't care. Like, this is a team that's building something. It is like, I don't want to be like, oh, this feels like it was a decade ago because, that decade ago Raptors team is like a once in a lifetime thing to have happened. And it's really hard to replicate what they did. Like, very few teams in the history of the sport have ever done that over as many years as they did. But a lot of the stuff, a lot of the through lines, a lot of just the general vibe and feel of the team, the organization, everyone pulling in the same direction, it does mirror that stuff quite a bit, all the way down to having like this shadow core of young, interesting players who kind of come onto the scene as rookies and are, bit contributors, and then they level up the following season and going on from there. Like, I think there's runway for all that stuff to happen. I got like very excited thinking about what this team is going to be going forward. I think RJ Barrett, he was the guy I thought who was like palpably like the most excited to see what they can do next year as well. And he was asked about like playing at home, and he kind of got onto this thing where he was talking to a friend of his who was just like, when you guys get back in the playoffs, City's going to be crazy, man. And like that literally sent like a tickle down my spine as he was saying that. It's like, damn, he's right. Like, this is going to be awesome. And yeah, maybe I'm a homer. Maybe I'm just like drinking the Kool-Aid way too hard, but I do think there's something pretty interesting brewing here. And again, it's not to say they're going to win a championship next year or ever. It's really hard to do. This collection of players probably does not have championship upside as it exists right now. I don't care. I want some fun, cool basketball that doesn't end in 30-win seasons. And they 100% have that, within their realm of possibilities next year. And probably something a little bit more impressive than just winning some regular season games in a cutesy fashion too. Like, I think there's some upside here. Again, not title upside, but win a playoff round. We'll see. It's hard to say. We got to see them actually play. survive a whole season with health and everything. But the ingredients are here, man. They really are. We'll come back on the other side, rattle through the good, the bad, and the from the weekend that was. One last time, we talk about a thing I liked, a thing I didn't like, and a thing that's got me a little bit intrigued. A bit of a blend of media day, locker cleanout, plus a couple of things that actually happened on the floor over the weekend as well. We'll do that coming up in just 1 sec. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel has given new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That is pretty sweet. FanDuel makes making picks super easy, whether you're picking your favorite team or diving into player props. Of course, my number one advice whenever you're going to sports wager in the playoffs is just bet against your own team to win. It's the happiness hedge. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs maybe have the juice this year. I don't know. They make me anxious all the time, but I'm not going to bet on them to win. I'm going to bet against them. So if they do lose in embarrassing fashion, at least they got some money out of the deal, and it's fine. The happiness hedge. Do it if you're worried about the sports. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Wrapping things up here on your, what the hell day is it? Monday episode of Locked On Raptors as we dig into the Raptors season finale weekend where they took on the Dallas Mavericks on Friday, got waxed because they played like 7 players and the Mavericks actually cared about that game. And then they lost to the San Antonio Spurs, blew a lead. That was a bit of a bummer. You go in with a big first half lead. You piss it away in the second half. Okay, whatever. You got a cool Scottie Barnes game. That was fun. Jonathan Mobo, another near triple-double. Jamison Battle going off. The results kind of immaterial to me. Don't especially care. But yeah, let's get to the good, the bad, and the shall we? For one last time, a reminder, this is the way we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast on the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game with a thing I liked, a thing I didn't like, and a thing that's got me a little bit intrigued from the latest in Raptors hoops. In this case, the last of Raptors hoops, at least until Summer League. The good, let's give it up to Ochai Agbaji having a night in Dallas on Friday. 17 first quarter points, 24 points overall, 9 of 12, 6 of 7 from downtown. And look, Ochai Agbaji, he's unassuming. He doesn't really pop off the screen really at any time. He's just there to be dependable. And I do think it's worth giving it up to the Raptors' Mr. Dependable this season, where, yeah, he missed some time with injury, was in and out of the lineup down the stretch as the team did its whole tank thing. But I genuinely think this was like such a transformative year for Ochai Agbaji, a guy who came into the season where his like NBA future was very much on the line. And he just became this rock solid, really helpful role player that every team in the league needs. I don't know what his future in Toronto holds. The luxury tax thing is a thing. He's a guy who is due for an extension this summer, may not get that from this team because of what they've already committed to other guys. Maybe he gets moved in a roster balancing deal or for a pick or something this summer. We'll see. But what a year for Ochai, and just wanted to give him one last little bouquet of flowers to close out the year because we didn't really give him a whole lot. He just kind of was there and was dependable most nights of the year. He started an inordinate number of games for what we thought he was going to because of all the injuries, and he was just Ochai Agbaji all the way through. Hell of a year for him, being an absolute rock for this team, and cool to see him have that outburst moment against the Mavericks on Friday. The bad, Garrett Temple getting hurt on Sunday. You don't want to see that. Of course, the news came out today from the Raptors PR staff. Let us know that it's an MCL sprain, left knee. The Raptors, he's going to be with the Raptors into the summer. They'll be taking care of him and his recovery from here. And again, Garrett Temple seems very much beloved. I am not sure he's going to be gone. I think there's a real chance he's just back as the 15th man again, which, hey, like if everyone on the team is speaking highly of it as like a thing that he brings to the table, then I'm inclined to buy that there is some actual tangible value to having Garrett Temple on the basketball team. So yeah, it sucks that he got hurt. Hopefully his recovery goes just fine. A couple other injury updates while we're on that note. I think the two most notable ones from today, Brandon Ingram, he of course had that PRP injection into his ankle last week in the interest of speeding up his recovery, getting ready for the summer. He'll be reassessed in a month once the team kind of reconvenes in May to get their summer started. And it seems like he responded well to the PRP injection and all that stuff. Ingram spoke today. Seems very excited, seems anxious to get on the floor, et cetera, et cetera. Not really any alarm bells there. The other one, which is very encouraging, was Ulrich Chamche, who, of course, has the MCL tear that he suffered a couple months back, I guess now. Is on track, it seems. He's apparently recovered quite well since the injury and is on track to be a full go for Summer League in July, which is very exciting. Of course, things can change. Knees are finicky. You can have setbacks, etc. But right now, it seems like a full Summer League for Ulrich Chamche, which is a really big deal. Obviously, a really important developmental year for him. The first full summer of being a pro is always a really big deal for guys. And it's cool that he's hopefully going to get at least most of a summer. He's obviously not going to be fully ready between now. Like, he'll take some time, surely, to recover from surgery still. But if he's getting a full summer league in, that's awesome. Really excited to see that for Ulrich Chamche. Good news today. Injuries are bad, but we have a good within the bad to close out the year. So deal with it. The for me is it's kind of related to the rookies. I mean, we saw the rookies show out again this weekend. Jonathan Mobo, 8 on really bad shooting in that game Friday against the Mavericks, but the assist totals he's picked up down the stretch, like, you can't just do that on a whim. Like, there has to be some ability to rack up those dimes. He was a +4 in the game Sunday against the Spurs as well, despite going 4-14, 9 points, 14 boards, 10 assists, 4 steals, a +4 in a game they lost by 7. Okay. Big on Mobo. Jamison Battle, obviously the 7-15 game from 3, 25 points, 9 boards, 3 assists, 42 minutes played on Sunday. Got himself a couple more three threes in that game against the Mavericks on Friday as well. A really impressive season for Jamison Battle as an undrafted free agent. Very cool. Jamal Shed continues to do the thing, playmaking, setting guys up, et cetera, et cetera. A bit of a rough go for him efficiency-wise over the last couple. 1 of 9 from deep against the Mavericks on Friday. You don't love that, but overall, I don't think you can be anything but thrilled with the season Jamal Shed had. And I'm just fascinated to see what this run down the stretch will mean for these guys going into next year. We talk a lot about how March basketball, April basketball is kind of fake. It doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But I do think there is something to the idea of rookies getting their feet wet in NBA basketball games, feeling the speed of the NBA, playing with guys that they figure to play with going forward. Jamal Shed actually talked a lot today about just the value of him playing with Mobo and Battle and Walter this season, and the chemistry they built with one another as a result. Those guys could be all pretty important parts of second unit basketball next year. That's really interesting. There's probably going to be competition between them for second unit minutes next year too. That's also fun and usually a pretty good thing for player development. And I'm not under any illusions that Jonathan Mobo is a walking triple-double starting next season or anything like that. But how much can this stuff translate over? I think it's very much, probably dependent on each guy. Frankly, there's not a one-size-fits-all thing of what March basketball means for each guy. But I do think, if there is a silver lining of watching the team kind of not try to win games down the stretch, heavy minutes for rookies, it's never a bad thing as you try to bring them along in their learning curve. And again, across the board, very high praise for all the rookies at Media Day today. That's going to end your very overly optimistic Toxic Positivity Monday, I guess. We'll be back again tomorrow. Vivek Jacob will be along. We're going to probably take a look at sort of priorities for the offseason for the team, developmentally, additions-wise, personnel, all that good stuff. We will do that as we trudge forth to the offseason now. We'll still do some looking back on the season that was as well, review some guys' seasons, look ahead to what's to come. We're going to next week review our bold predictions with Joseph Gasharo, always a fun one. But a lot of forward-looking stuff now that we are into the offseason. The draft lottery is less than a month away, 4 weeks today, I believe. That's very exciting. We'll have it all covered for you. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. Follow, subscribe, rate, review. You can, of course, also subscribe to the newsletter. QR code on the screen, link in the description of the podcast. Once you do that, between now and April 30th, if you sign up for the newsletter, you will be entered into a draw to win one of 3 prizes, either a $200 Fanatics gift card, a $300 Game Time gift card, or a $2,500 grand prize gift card to Best Buy to go fix your setup, buy Nintendo Switch, whatever it is you want. Please go do that. Sign on up. It's much appreciated when you support the newsletter, as always. And thank you for supporting it all season long. We got 2,000 subs this year. That's rad. Let's get more and get you some stuff in the process. So thank you. Talk to you again Tuesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye. That's just terrible. It was a Blake Griffin shot.